This episode of Her Design, Her Story is proudly sponsored by Royal Oak Floors, the founders of engineered oak flooring in Australia. Elegant yet durable, practical yet luxurious, Royal Oak Floors have formed the foundations of inspiring Australian architecture and interior design for over 20 years, with flooring products that are uniquely tailored to Australian lifestyles. Royal Oak Floors is proud to announce the launch of 4 new colours in its renowned Architect collection, the result of collaborative workshops in which design professionals shared emerging trends, unmet needs and evolving preferences in Australian interiors. We're proud to partner with a brand that values craftsmanship, sustainability and the stories behind every space. Explore the new colours at royaloakfloors.com.au. Today's guest is Kim Kneipp, an award-winning interior designer, stylist and creative director whose work explores the powerful connection between people, place and well-being. Based in Melbourne, Kim leads a multidisciplinary design practice that spans residential, commercial and wellness projects. Her interiors are known for their warmth, authenticity and emotional depth, drawing inspiration from natural materials, Japanese design principles, and a deep understanding of how environments shape the way we live, work and feel. Kim's creative journey has been anything but conventional. Beginning her career in fashion design, she later transitioned into interiors, bringing with her a strong commitment to sustainability, craftsmanship and meaningful transformation. She describes her approach as design acupuncture, a process inspired by balance, flow and the subtle ways spaces can support human well-being. Over the years, Kim has collaborated on a diverse range of projects, including health and wellness destinations, while building a reputation for creating spaces that are both beautiful and deeply functional. I'm excited to explore her creative philosophy, her entrepreneurial journey, and the lessons she's learned along the way. Kim, welcome to Her Design, Her Story. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to speak to you. You have had quite an incredible career in the lead up to where you're at today in interior design. So I did want to go back to the beginning of your career pathway. I know you grew up in far north Queensland, which is also amazing. Could you talk me through a little bit around those first pathways that you took when you left school?
Yeah, certainly. I grew up in far north Queensland on a big bush block, swimming,
Amazing.
And my father had set up the block as an acupuncture school. So I grew
wow.
up studying acupuncture from a really young age and living on the land and with an extended community of craftspeople. We had a cabinet making company and my mother had a commercial pottery and we studied acupuncture every day. And we swam
amazing.
every day. And
Sounds
so
heavenly.
it was pretty great. But because it was also in far north Queensland, you know, Cairns was our closest city and it was at a huge time when there was a lot of Japanese tourism and Japanese industry coming to Cairns that was setting up a lot of the 5-star resorts. And so we ended up doing a lot of work on some of those resorts. My family's businesses, like my mum would make huge urns for them, and we had a lot of Japanese exchange students coming through our school. And so there was always this combination of this sort of country, rural North Queensland upbringing, but with very strong Asian and particularly Japanese inspiration. And I was a total nerd at school. I thought I wanted to be, well, a spy really, but really thought I was going to, didn't get there, but I thought maybe law or international business because I'd studied Italian and loved it and was fluent in it. And having arty creative parents, they thought that was the worst suggestion ever. And they encouraged me to study fashion, which was very left field because I couldn't draw and I'd never sewn.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, but I obviously had an eye for something that they could see.
Yep.
And I applied. I knew that I wanted to move to a big city if I was going to do it. And so I actually flew to Brisbane, did a 1-week drawing course so I could put together a portfolio.
Oh, wow.
And then applied to Sydney and Melbourne and got into East Sydney Technical College, which at the time was sort of one of the leading fashion schools. And so I was 17 and moved to Sydney by myself and as soon as I finished year 12 and was totally in the deep end studying fashion. It was not something I naturally knew about and I was this country girl from North Queensland, and what did I know about fashion? And it didn't make sense for a while, and I sort of had a bit of an existential crisis with it, trying to make sense of being somebody who was an academic and then trying to get into something that was so different.
Yeah.
But I saw it as an opportunity to test it out as a language. And so I worked really hard, and I did quite well with it actually, and had pretty interesting work experiences, like a placement with Colette Dinnigan and with other really interesting people in Sydney.
Yeah.
And then moved to Melbourne as soon as I finished fashion, and because my boyfriend at the time was in a rock band and they were all moving to Melbourne. They had all been living in Brisbane. It's like, yes, I'll come too. But I think I got down here and just realised that it made a lot more sense to me. I think because I had such a passion for Italy and the Italian language and just the European feel of Melbourne, I totally loved. And my first job was in what back at the time was sort of called a product development company, which was pretty much the people who were called designers were really buyers. They would travel around the world and buy samples of commercial styles that we would then recreate for all the mass market stalls here. So we were creating the product lines for Suzanne and Meyer and Witchery and Target and all of those sort of people.
Yeah.
And it was the most immersive, intense learning curve. It was one of those great opportunities where it was big company with a lot of infrastructure. And I think like in any industry, if you start out really raw in a huge company, I think you learn a lot of rules on somebody else's time.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of different people with different skills. Which I found quite interesting working in bigger offices as well.
Yeah, and I think that the access to suppliers who want to work with you because you've got the buying power to order tens or hundreds of thousands of units.
True.
And so at the time, it was before manufacturing was happening offshore as well. So we were manufacturing everything in Australia.
Oh, wow.
And so that was quite amazing. Just the wealth of manufacturing and cutting and all the sample companies. And so I worked for them for 2.5 years and then went and worked for a small, very small fashion label, their own independent label called Rich. That was owned by, it was a brother and 2 sisters, a close Italian family. And that was lovely because they sent me to Italy to source fabrics.
Oh, amazing.
And that was really great. And then I worked for another small independent label that I created for, used to be these really cool stores called Fat. There was Fat 52.
I remember Fat 52.
Yeah. So I set up their first in-house label. I managed their stores for a while.
They were very cool.
Like they were very cool. Yeah, I think they were also just at a really amazing time in the Melbourne fashion landscape where they created a platform for all these small makers and labels to become discovered and to find their own voice. And they had a very cool edge and a great discerning eye. And I realised early on that it made more sense to me to work under the structure of somebody else. And so it was quite a wonderful scaffolding where I was employed by them to create their first in-house label, which we could then sell through the country and New Zealand and Singapore, and that was really cool. But ultimately, the whole time I was in the industry, I struggled with it a little bit in terms of the cycle of consumption, and I always felt a bit of an existential crisis, I suppose, of being in something where you needed to constantly renew. And so then I started working. I first worked with a mental health organisation in Paran at the same time that I was designing a fashion label, where I then started running these refashioning workshops for people who were experiencing mental health problems.
Wow.
So I taught them how to cut up and refashion old clothing and sculpt it into new garments.
Oh, amazing.
And it was great because then I think, in my late 20s, I moved over to Canada. I went and lived in Quebec City, and I'd heard about this mental health arts organisation over there.
Yeah.
And I approached them and told them that these workshops were something I wanted to keep doing. And they sort of said, come back when you can speak French. But Quebec has this amazing... It was a good challenge though.
Yeah.
Quebec City was sort of quite amazing because they are so desperate for people to keep the French language alive. And so they actually create this system where if you've arrived and you have a work permit or a visa to live in the country, for free you can study 5 days a week, 4 hours a day in an immersion school.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I did that. I did 3 months of immersion and because I could already speak Italian, French came quite quickly.
Yeah.
So I went back to them and said, right, I can speak French, let's do this. And it was amazing. They got council, government grants and we started running these programs of these mental health refashioning workshops.
Yeah.
And they were really profoundly transformative for me and for the participants because, I was teaching something in a foreign language and being quite vulnerable in doing that while working with a whole lot of people who were going through vulnerable periods in their life as well. And so I think I did that for a couple of years. And then when I moved back to Melbourne and had my first child, I realised that I didn't want to get straight back into fashion as I'd known it. I'd had this amazing sort of transformative experience of the impact that clothing could have, but also of teaching a skill and teaching people how to feel better in their own skin, so to speak. And so I started a service, 20 years ago now called The Sustainable Stylist. And I used to go in and refashion people's wardrobes. So I would do one-on-one personal styling, but I was all about reducing the fashion consumption model and giving new outfits that people could wear with what they already had. And then if there were garments that they had that they weren't wearing, I would figure out what we could do. We could turn it into a scarf or we could tailor it or layer it into something else.
It's very forward thinking because I feel like it's quite topical now. I think people are taking a lot more awareness into that sustainable element in that fast fashion.
Yeah, it was unusual at the time and it felt really great. And what was interesting, so I did that really passionately and just found people found me at such interesting moments of their life, whether it was a child had left home or a partner had left them or they'd left a partner or they'd reached a new age or a new job. So it was always these moments of transformation or change. And
amazing.
Yeah, I really, really loved it. And it sort of then got to the point where, I'd organise their wardrobes and get new coat hangers, and then I'd sometimes turn up with a power drill and say, let's just make your wardrobe actually look better as well. And actually, why don't we rearrange that couch while we're here?
That's
and
so good.
I would start rearranging their furniture and then realise that actually this is the bit I really want to be doing. Let's keep doing this. And
that's so
and
funny.
so that was very sweet, just watching that easy transition between styling people's clothing to their furniture and understanding the impact that both of those changes could make on the way you experienced your day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. So was that your, I guess, first foray into interior design?
Interiors? Probably. I think my nickname as a child was the Lone Arranger. I loved rearranging things and organising things and so I was always rearranging my own furniture. I think from a little age I realised that it was how I felt better about myself. If I had an emotional block, rearrange furniture, everything gets sorted out.
Or if I'm procrastinating, I'll just go and clear out and reshuffle something.
Oh, it's the best.
I did that yesterday.
I think in my 20s I intentionally, we didn't have the domestic problem we have with residential crisis now with housing crisis, but all my leases through my 20s were only ever for 6 months because I was obsessed with, oh my gosh, I'll live here and then I can try my furniture in a whole new place. How
I know.
fun.
I love moving.
I loved it.
Yeah.
It sounds
we moved
now.
a lot when I was younger and I loved it because and I can see it in my kids, the joy they get in being in a new space.
Oh, they like it.
They love it. Like going to someone like a house or if you Airbnb somewhere or go into a new hotel or something.
Yeah.
I think because I get so excited.
Do you rearrange hotel rooms?
Sometimes I have.
Me too.
Yeah, I did the other
essential.
day. It's like, what are they thinking?
and then sometimes it's like, you know what, I'm not even going to put it back because they got this as a free service.
No, I have done that before, particularly if we're in there for a while. Like this is not working, we'll just have a quick reshuffle.
I think if you're a rearranger, it's you can't not.
No,
it has to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I do enjoy it in a fresh perspective, I think. So did you go back and study interior design or was that something
I didn't. So I had this really great, I think because I started just styling people's homes and I sort of stepped into being, from fashion styling to interior styling, that was a very easy transition because that was similar sort of work. And I was living at an eco retreat up in Daylesford, and it was a vegan raw food retreat centre actually. And at the time, I was running these workshops. That part of living there, everyone would run different workshops, and they had these cooking and yoga workshops. And I learned how to cook gluten-free vegan baking while I was up there because I loved baking. And so I started running them as part of these workshops. And this couple came along to one of the workshops and loved what we were doing, and we got on really well. And it turned out they were setting up an eco retreat in Red Hill. And they really liked me and the manager, who was my partner at the time, who was running this centre, and asked if we could set up this retreat centre for them. And so I had this amazing opportunity where it was this 15-bedroom old sort of motel almost in Red Hill. And they didn't have a huge budget and not a huge amount of time, but gave me this opportunity to say, do you want to do this? And it was just, I knew how rare that was for somebody who, didn't have a portfolio to show, but they had seen what I had done at this place and liked me. And so I used it as my most intensive sort of business card opportunity. So I created it that every single bedroom had a different theme, and they were all themed around the elements and the seasons, and we set up a yoga room and did the whole dining room. So it was a really immersive project. And, I brought my son down on site. And I was a single mother while I was doing it. And we just lived on site and renovated this project. And that was an incredible learning curve. Yeah. And then what was amazing was that they then reached out to Peninsula Hot Springs to ask if this new retreat centre could be one of their preferred accommodation collaborators.
Yeah.
And so one of the owners from the hot springs went through the facility and said, yes, you can, and we want the name of whoever did this for you.
Oh, incredible.
And so it did exactly what I was hoping. Peninsula Hot Springs then reached out to me and called me in for a meeting and asked if I could start working with them.
Oh, how incredible.
So it was, and then I think the foray into arriving at the hot springs, it was the most interesting segue of coming in. They liked that I had a fashion background. They were looking for new uniforms. And to begin with, my brief was, what clock should we put over here and what umbrella stand? They were very simple sort of styling exercises. But they quickly realised that my skill set could extend further, and I kept extending it further. And in the space of the 10 years that I was there, by the end of that period, I was an embedded design director overseeing every touch point across every department and leading over. And because they had external contracting architects, there was this scaffolding of knowing that anything that we were designing or building, we had people who were looking at and certifying. Yeah. And then, it's a really large, complex organisation with 250 or 300 staff. And within they have heaps of their own embedded trades. So they have a carpentry team, electrical, plumbing, hydro.
Oh, wow. I didn't realise it was so
hydronics.
Evolved,
and then they've got, all the other departments. And it was just this amazing, I think because there were 3 directors at the beginning and they had very, very different tastes, and I had an interesting connection, quite a separate connection with each one of them.
Yeah.
And I think for them I became this wonderful conduit to help distill all of their visions. And then because I kept demonstrating that I was able to do what I could do, and because I had the support of all these embedded trades, it was like I did a 10-year vocational training course.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It was very amazing. Yeah, and I think it was just a very rare opportunity because I got to look at, I designed the uniforms, and then I worked on their brand voice and all their marketing collateral, and I built the language around their food philosophy, and we looked at all the wayfinding and the seasonal language that we do. It was really amazing. And then when they did their huge expansion with all the with their whole wellness offering, so all their accommodation and the new pools and the new yoga facilities, I got to oversee all of that and direct all the landscapers and all the architects.
Wow,
and
fun.
It was so fun. It was, and I think because I was given that role maybe only a year before I had my second child, and because I was aware that it was like, this is a magic unicorn of a project that I get to express the full gamut of my strategic way of thinking as well. I turned back up with my son 10 days old on my chest, and I would go down once a week still with him on my chest because it was so wonderful to be part of it, and I didn't want to miss out on continuing working with them.
How incredible.
And it was like being with a family. They were so supportive of me walking around with this little baby strapped to my chest. And
yeah, that's amazing. So did you say how many years were you working there?
a bit more than 10.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, and so I was never their employee. I always stayed on board as a consultant.
So were you working under your own name at that point?
I was under my own name. So I was still the sustainable stylist for all of that. So they hired me under that umbrella. And then as my role changed, it just kept, by the end, because I had such a close, trusting and collaborative relationship with the owner, he would be travelling to hot springs and conferences all around the world, and it was basically, if you need that signed off, you need to check in with Kim. And it was just like
how good.
It was very, very amazing.
That's incredible.
And just to be so heavily involved with the board members and all the stakeholders and all the heads of departments and all the operational teams.
I never would have picked. I've only been there once, to be honest, but I know it's a really popular place to go, and it's certainly been around and for a long time and going strength to strength.
Yeah.
But also I think with that whole concept of wellness becoming a lot more topical as well.
At the moment.
No, I never would have picked the enormous structure.
No, and I
I
think that's what's so interesting about it is that by nature it tries to stay like that. It looks quite natural and unassuming.
Yeah.
And, it's a very fine line. So, the hardest job down there was trying to balance its fabulous growth with trying to keep budget in place to keep the facilities up to speed, because a facility like that has such huge numbers coming through it and such a huge tourist destination, they get tired because it's mineral waters and oils and massages, and there are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, actually, I can imagine, and the maintenance.
I learnt so much about fabrics I never would have known about, and, what responds to body fat and mineral oils and how to, and what stock of paper we should use, because if they've got wet fingers from the water, what's not going. It was just so every touch point. Yeah, it was quite amazing.
Well, that's incredible, and probably actually makes sense to have, your sort of eye cast through everything, because it's quite an intertwined experience.
Yeah, they'd never had that before, and they sort of don't have somebody in that role since I haven't been there. But it just, I think because I was at a point when the founders, they ended up selling the business, and new owners came in, and I was there through a change of a few different leaderships, and in that I got to help create a bit of a seamless transition. Yeah. So it was quite lovely.
That's amazing. Stepping forward a bit now, you've got your design studio still. What's your current studio setup like?
We are little.
Yeah.
We're really. I've played with it a little bit over the last sort of 5 years, trying having 5 to 6 people. But at the moment, there's 2.5 of us, and it's so fabulous. I really like it. I realised, like, after COVID, when I decided to not keep consulting to the Springs and do my own business. We had lots of inquiries, and I sort of grew a little bit too quickly actually, and realised I was saying yes to too many things to keep everybody's wages paid. Yeah. And realised that I didn't want that I much prefer being really immersed in a project and having fewer projects. And so that's been lovely to distill down to find the right number of staff. Yeah,
it's been interesting having a few conversations with people now. It sounds like that's quite a big part of finding what works for you. Otherwise you sort of can become to that point as well where it becomes a lot about people management.
And suddenly paying other people to do design that you do quite naturally and that you want to do. That's why I started the business. Yeah. And realising that, I know that there's all those small business rules about how you're supposed to grow a business so you can sell it. But that's not my goal. My goal is to just keep doing something I love. And so I'm not in it with the idea that I have to scale it so somebody can come in and run it for me or own it. So I think that changes the relationship when you're not looking at it as something that needs to be sold.
Yeah, and I think when it's your name on it as well, it's a bit more of a personal enterprise.
Yeah, it was a big deal actually to put my own name on it.
Yeah, I've found that for myself as well.
Have you found that? Yeah.
People are like, oh, you from, kind of get a bit funny about it. Yeah, no, it is. It's interesting because I think there's sort of quite different approaches to that naming journey that, you know, some people have had quite the opposite idea. But I think for me, probably like you, it's a bit more about that personal experience. And I think having worked in some bigger offices as well, for me, I think both work. I think it's just that point of difference sometimes in being the main point of contact.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting though to accept that, you know, I think we were talking earlier about websites and developing a website. And for me, taking on my own voice was actually accepting that it means that I can just change what I want to do because it's not got a title to it. It can be as multifaceted as I am, and it actually it opened me up rather than needing a name that was more limiting.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things I found really interesting listening to your journey is you've been really open to new opportunities, and I think able to go with the flow a bit on that as well, which is incredible because I think sometimes I worry so much, I can't do that or I won't be good enough, or, you know, that self-doubt comes in. But I think that's what's quite nice actually is, you know, I've had a few different types of projects come my way, and I think with age and confidence I've got better at saying yes, but I think it just gives you that opportunity, I guess, to adapt a little bit to what's changing and working with different clients.
And I think my approach has always been, and I've always said this to staff as well, like so often I'll be presented with a project, or even really early on in the Hot Springs after I'd done the uniforms, and one of the owners, the founders, sort of handed me these plans from the architect and said, "So can you read these?" And I went, "Yep. Yes, yeah, sure, I can read those," and went home and learned how to read them. And I've just always had that approach of not yet, but tomorrow I will know how to do that. And I've sort of tried to avoid. It's always like that scene in The Matrix where he gets booted in to how to, now I know Kung Fu. It's like, okay, I'm going to learn how to do that. And
I'll work out how to make it happen.
Yeah, and I've always really liked that. And I think that's what was so special about my time there, was that there were so many people who were so open to me really asking lots of questions and inquiring. And when they would say no, I would always say, but why? Why not? And it's still my approach now. It's I think sometimes by not having arrived at it from a formal path, it means I don't have a locked way of having to look at something. And I almost sort of maintain a childish sort of naivety of saying, okay, but what if we did think about it like this? Would this work? And what I've found is that people are really open to that and responsive, and that really great outcomes actually end up coming from it.
Yeah, and I think you can work out, you know, what sort of builders or carpenters or joiners, and you find people that are happy to sort of work with you in that way.
And they're the favourite ones, the ones who actually want to problem solve, or, you know, where you can sort of say, look, I want it this much.
Yeah.
You know, but I've also learned, like, you know, I've learnt where my strengths are. And so I've always made sure on my team I have qualified interior designers who've gone through the system and they do all my documentation. So I will do all the concept design work and all the meetings and, you know, most of the material compositions. And then, you know, rely on them for their detailed drawings so that I can then sit with them and go over everything, but I'm not actually doing the documentation myself.
Yeah, and no, it's good, and I think everyone's got their strengths and things they prefer to bring to the process as well. In terms of the current projects you're doing, do you do residential work? Are you still doing a bit of wellness?
We do a little bit of all the above. We've been doing lots of residential since COVID. We are working at the moment on a really beautiful skincare clinic that will
amazing.
Hopefully by the end of this year be open. And we have another small office project. So it's a mixture, and we have a couple of projects on up in Byron Bay at the moment as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's quite lovely. I'm starting to find that that my Queensland knowledge, my tropical knowledge, it has traction because there's different material awarenesses you need to have for the elements.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess the heat up there.
And the mould.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
humidity, beach, Oh, amazing. I did want to talk about your design ethos. Coming back to the website, you've got a beautiful website.
Oh, thank you.
And it's sort of read, we were just talking before about that process of websites. I always find it very overwhelming, but yours has got this wonderful sort of edge to it, I thought. And it didn't necessarily speak to interior design. I thought it was more about the ethics and the ethos of what your brand was talking about. Can you talk a little bit around that concept of design acupuncture and what that means for your practice?
Yeah, it's taken me a long time to call it that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because I did grow up studying acupuncture, it was sort of a funny moment of not wanting to. I'm not a qualified acupuncturist, so it's sort of, but it's a term that feels a lot to me. I grew up learning how to read the pulses and studying acupuncture on a daily basis, and the idea of how it makes sense through all of the threads of my work, which I think is what you're feeling on the website. It's geared towards interior design, but the scope of what we do is sort of across lots of facets.
Yeah.
And what my notion of design acupuncture is, it's that same idea of feeling the pulse of the project you're working on, the people and the space, and feeling where there's blockages and where you need to create flow, which is sort of the principle that underlines the thinking of traditional Chinese medicine as well. And I think it's about helping find the targeted ways to unite the elements and, create a sense of flow. Really.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really beautiful, and you sort of sense that through the language of the projects you're doing, which is gorgeous. I did want to ask you in a bit of a final reflection on work. I think you've had some incredible work experiences. Amazing. I know we touched on it a little bit, but are there any key personal attributes that you think you have that have enabled you to get to where you are in your career today?
I think my why not curiosity.
Yeah,
I think,
which is beautiful and quite refreshing. Yeah,
I have a sort of country girl open curiosity and tenacity, where I want to understand why something won't work, how I can do it better, and always understand that if I just ask questions and surround myself with other people who might know more, then more can come from it. And so I think, I think curiosity might be one of the biggest ones, with resilience.
Yeah, resilience is a theme that comes up a lot actually, and I think it's obviously really important because things don't always work out for us.
Totally. I mean, so much goes
Sadly.
wrong. Fashion was really interesting for that because I think when you'd be working at producing a collection at the same time that you're trying to sell the next season, and each time when you're in production, the rule always was that if something could go wrong, it would. Yeah. And it would just be excruciating because you'd be sort of trying to feel so optimistic about this next collection that you're trying to sell to get sales for, while you're watching that some other decision that you made 5 months earlier that you're still trying to correct. And so there was this
I hadn't thought about it like that actually,
Yeah, it was just the pace of it compared to working in homes. It was so fast that you're constantly juggling production and new design simultaneously all the time. And I think things just would go wrong so much.
Yeah,
just a button and little things that you know that you're really sweating a buttonhole and its position, but it would change a lot of the impact, and you could lose a sale because it wasn't delivered how the sample was, and so I think that taught a lot of thinking on my feet.
Yeah, and I guess because you have to pre-order everything as well, there's that element of, I guess pressure of sales and. Yeah, I've always thought fashion would be.
Yeah, and I think because every single garment has so many elements, I was absolutely obsessed with pleating and buttons. They were sort of my two main, themes that seem to come up. But, from swing tags to the thread colour to the zip to every little thing that you're getting custom dyed, like they're all the same elements we deal with in interior design. But I think what was so interesting is how consolidated it is, and it's for every single garment. And sometimes you'll have 40 garments in a collection. And so it was a lot of being incredibly organised.
Yeah.
And, I liked lists and stamps and checking things off.
Which is probably important for that.
I think so, yeah.
I also did want to touch on, I guess, inspiration in terms of not necessarily for interior design work, but obviously you've had a really creative pathway through your career. Have there been any key ways that you've found inspiration, whether it's fashion or interior design? Is there anything that you sort of bring into your routine that helps you?
I think it's always been rummaging and thrift shopping. I think actually, even when the combination of I think that's sort of like the Rearrangers Manifesto idea of finding old things and giving them a new purpose. And so I think always if I'm feeling a bit stuck, if I go into an op shop and just sift through racks, there's so many stories that come up and so many textural combinations that are much more unique than anything that I will find on a Pinterest board because it's random.
Yeah.
And I quite like the randomisation that garage sales and op shops and markets give.
Yeah. And that sort of tangible.
Totally. You know, I think
quality.
that was how I used to design clothes. I would buy secondhand clothes, and particularly ones that I liked the seams of, and then I'd reconstruct them and then give them to my pattern maker because I liked having the history of some of the weird shapes from something else in it. And I think that's always been almost one of my favourite things in residential work in particular, or actually no, for businesses as well, where you're having to work with something that's already there and figuring out how to keep that and not lose that integrity of that story, but build and layer something else with
that's
it.
really beautiful and quite a similar language, I guess, that can weave through.
Totally.
Which is really nice. I also wanted to touch on your two children who, how old are they now?
19 and about to turn 13, and they are both elite athletes.
Oh, wow.
So I am like a hardcore sports mum on the sidelines.
What kind of sports are
My
they
oldest
into?
son is currently playing VFL for North Melbourne, hoping to get drafted. He didn't make it last year. He had an injury and was out most of the year.
That's incredible.
But so he's doing really well with that. And then my younger son is playing national level tennis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're both really, you know, my partner, we pretty much joke that he's on tour all the time with my youngest now because they're going between Canberra and Sydney and Launceston.
Did you play much sport?
I did. My older brother was a professional squash player, so I felt like it feels very familiar. I didn't compared to them.
Yeah.
I was the nerdy one who, you know, liked wearing ties, still like wearing ties. But it's very familiar and it's just been amazing. My partner's very competitive, and I think what they have innately, he's then fostered practically, and it's intense.
Oh, that's amazing.
I am on a lot of I'm mostly the footy mum and he's mostly the tennis dad.
Yeah. But that's incredible.
It is amazing. It's amazing, but it does mean that I'm very non-negotiable with my work because my boys need a lot of good food and I do a lot of cooking, and I need to make sure that there's always a great balance of protein and carbohydrates, and that, you know, that I'm around. So it's been really interesting. I think that's also part of why I love keeping my studio small, because I really want to be available. Yeah,
and it's funny, isn't it? Because some people sort of would say in passing, oh, once they get to school, it's just, but I actually find the psychological time and the driving. Mine is still young, shorter, but
compared to childcare.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that falsely when I started my business, and was like, oh, it's fine once he hits primary school. And then it was like, oh my goodness, now I need before and after school care. How does that work?
I know, and then everyone's doing different things and you're trying to encourage them to do all the things. But
and then it's like, please don't do weekend activities, please.
I know. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, well, hopefully the VFL works out.
Hopefully.
Be very exciting. Before we wrap, I wanted to jump into the Her Edit questions.
Shoot.
So some quick questions for you. I'm interested in this one. Can you remember a first design-related purchase you ever made, like a homewares thing or an artwork?
I don't remember the purchase, but I do remember this really dorky thing, the very first thing I asked our cabinet making company to make for me. And they used to fit out really beautiful, high quality. And of course we had like the cheap white falling apart melamine kitchen that you have. And I did a drawing of this sort of permutatable desk unit that would store my stereo. The lid would drop down to become a desk, and below it I was very nerdy and loved filing things, so I had a filing cabinet. And that was the epitome of great design for me when I was 14 or 15, and that has sat with me. My first white, I don't own it anymore, but that was my first white piece of melamine joinery. Very practical. That was music and study. Who needs more?
And filing.
Filing.
I do love a bit of filing. Is there anything you're currently coveting? I know sometimes as designers it can be a bit overwhelming. Or are there any sort of furniture designers that you love?
There's so many I love. I don't covet so much.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I actually don't covet. I've never been. I think partly this is to do with my whole op shop love. I've never been just fixated on designer pieces. I'm much more interested in a piece for what it is, and I don't care, clothing or furniture, what labels attached to it.
It's just
the piece that fills that need and look and texture, and
which is beautiful. There's so many great things around.
That said, we do have some beautiful pieces in our house.
Yeah, a balance. Next travel destination, actual or aspirational?
I have a big birthday ahead next year. I'll be 50.
Oh, that's exciting.
And my hope is to organise a trip to go and experience the architecture and spaces of Jeffrey Bauer in Sri Lanka.
Amazing.
I really love his work and the
Yes.
whole indoor-outdoor tropical connection of what he does. And I've known a few people who've done the tours now and they all come back just
Sounds amazing.
radiant and raving.
Yeah.
So that's my wish list at the moment.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Memorable. I
Yeah.
love that. Favourite creative icon, living or legend?
I would have to go back into my fashion world there and go with the holy trinity of Issey Miyake, Comme des Garçons and Yohji Yamamoto. They're all very, very different, and I know we're not supposed to lump them together, but they all played such a seminal role.
Was
for
that
me.
part of the exhibition?
Comme des Garçons was part of it with
that.
Vivienne Westwood.
Vivienne Westwood.
Yeah,
that's
but
right.
the three of them I love all for really different reasons, but they all have this ability to change the relationship of your body to cloth, and it doesn't follow Western ideas of sexuality or physique. I love the really sculptural way that they play with the negative space between fabric and your body.
And I feel like Issey Miyake, I just remember from years and years and years ago, just so quite architectural, I guess, and timeless.
Yeah, and joyful. You know, there's a movement in the pieces where you can be anything underneath. It doesn't matter if you're too skinny, too curvy, too whatever judgment you're putting on yourself.
Yeah.
The clothes don't care. They just allow you to feel relaxed underneath whatever silhouette you've created. And I think that is a very special gift of armour to yourself and a way to present yourself to the world.
Yes. No, they're beautiful. I just went into, they've opened this incredible new store in New York. It's absolutely breathtaking.
Oh,
but
what
the
is it?
fabrics, I'm trying to remember what part of town it's in, but it's just the store sort of speaks to that, the striking, the way the fashion was displayed was incredible. It's funny because I remember seeing a lot of the images. My mum used to buy a lot of magazines when I was younger, and I used to love looking in Vogue and all those magazines, and very striking, beautiful, and still very timeless from what they were.
Just a very different relationship to your body, which I find fascinating.
Really interesting. Final question. If your star was a celebrity, who would it be?
I had to think about this one a little bit.
So a hard question.
It is a hard question, and I actually have settled on Michelle Yeoh. Because I don't know if you remember when Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out, and just like the billowing
She's so
fabrics
cool.
and the tough fight in bamboo,
Yeah.
the combination of those elements. But then also the more I looked into her, I used to do Kung Fu when I was younger, and so she used to do all her own stunts in all of her own movies. She's so tough.
Really fit.
And she's super fit, super tough, but then also to be the first Asian woman to win an Oscar. I just love that she has this hard-working resilience that feels like she's willing to throw herself into anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit like the DNA of my business.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time today, Kim. I absolutely love speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.